going on, guys? Justin Fuller, ex-Honda salesman, tech lover, and today your host, and we're going to be reviewing the 2025 Honda CR-V EX. This car lives in an interesting place in the trim levels because one below it is the LX, your base model, one above it is the first available hybrid, and then is it worth the money? Should you go up? Should you go down? Or is there something else in the market you should buy? Let's go over all that and more. Now, at the beginning of the video, I mentioned that this vehicle lived in a particularly interesting position when it comes to trim levels. So I want to discuss that with you, but I want you to understand the basics first. Now, there's an LX, that is your base model, starts at $32,450. Above that, the EX, that's what we're sitting in and reviewing today, $33,700. Now, above this is where you find that first available hybrid model. So this is where things get interesting. One above it, you could jump to a hybrid, or one below it, you could drop down to the base model and try to save yourself some money. Now, when you get above the sport hybrid, there's then an EXL. That is a non-hybrid model. That is the highest trim you can get that is non-hybrid. Above that, there's a Sport L, which is newer as far as the trim levels go, and then the Sport Touring Hybrid, which is your top end, all the bells, all the whistles, right? So I just want you to understand where this lives as we're reviewing through the car. So let's talk about what's underneath the hood of the 2025 Honda CR-V EX. So you are looking at a 1.5 liter turboed engine putting out 190 horsepower. That is then running to a CVT transmission and then either out to two-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, depending on what you pick and buy. Now, I will tell you that there is a hybrid available. Right above this is a hybrid. That is going to be a 2-liter engine putting out 204 horsepower. So, depending on what you pick, you could get a little bit more horsepower of this car and actually better gas mileage. But is the hybrid worth it? Or should you be in this vehicle? I want to throw up a comparison so you can see how does this model stack up against other makes and models out there in the world. While that's up, of course, a reminder, there is the hybrid out there if that's something you're interested in. And then Honda does make a smaller SUV. You could potentially look at the Honda HR-V. That's a little bit smaller vehicle, a little bit different engine setup, but it's something out there to consider in case you need an SUV, but not necessarily this size and this price point. Money doesn't spin quite as far as it used to, so MPG starts to matter when you're looking at SUVs. So I want to talk about that for a second. This car gets 28 in the city and 34 on the highway. So I want to throw something up on the screen so you can see how that stacks up against other makes and models out in the world. While that's up, I'll remind you of two things. One, there is an all-wheel drive version. If you jump to that, you're looking at 27 in the city, and I want to say 32 on the highway, so you lose out on a mile or two a gallon depending. And then there is, of course, the hybrid out there, which gets 43 in the city and 36 on the highway, so considerably better gas mileage. And then, of course, if you still need an SUV, you're not sure you want to spend this much money, there's always the HR-V as well. So here we are at the front of the vehicle, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to check out the front fascia, right? When you look at a car, it really kind of gives an attitude. And of course, if you're gonna buy it, you want to see what it looks like and decide if you like it. But while we're up here, I want to talk to you about 0 to 60 times. This vehicle goes 0 to 60 in roughly 8.2 seconds. Now, you could jump into that hybrid model, which would get you down to roughly 7.6 seconds. So it just really depends on what you need and what you want. But let's be honest, we're not drag racing this car and really winning any race. But while we're here, I want to throw some up so you can see how this model stacks up against other makes and models out there in the world. I wanted you to have an opportunity to see what the 18-inch alloy wheel looks like that comes on the EX. If you were to drop down to that LX, you get a steel wheel with a hubcap cover, so not the prettiest look. I'd like to see alloys on all the trims, but let's be honest, they're just not going to do it. But while we're here, I want to talk to you about ground clearance. This car has 7.8 inches of ground clearance to the floor, to the top of the boards. Now, if you jumped into that all-wheel drive model, understand with the suspension setup, you were looking at 8.2 inches of ground clearance. So understand there is a difference depending on two-wheel and all-wheel drive when it relates to ground clearance. But while we're here, I want to throw a comparison up so you can see how the 7.8 on this vehicle stacks up against other makes and models out there in the world. While that's up, I'll just once again remind you, if you jump to a 2024, it's not going to make a difference. If you look at the hybrid, same thing. So if you're shopping SUVs, chances are cargo space is going to be important to you. So I want to talk to you about that. But first off, I want to talk to you about the tailgate. This model does not offer a powered tailgate. So understand, if you're looking for a powered tailgate or a hands-free one you can kick your foot under with the sensor, you're going to have to climb some trim levels. But while we're back here, let's talk about the space that you have. So you've got 39.3 cubic feet of cargo space to the second row. Now back here, I want to point out a couple things. Of course, the car comes with 4 carpeted floor mats. That's standard in the vehicle. You've got cubby spaces, tie downs, your tethers and your anchors back here, so you should be able to get a car seat in and put into the vehicle as needed. You do have a power outlet that's back here as well, and then a place if you wanted to put a privacy fold-out deal to cover any of your belongings. Now, underneath here is where you're going to find your spare. This is a full diameter spare with your jack and your accessories. Understand, if you jumped up to a hybrid model, they do not offer a spare. At that point, you'd be then looking at a tire repair kit. So just something to keep in mind in case you're shopping up a trim level as well. So while we're back here, I want to throw up a comparison. You can see how the 39.3 cubic feet in the back of this car stacks up against other makes and models out there in the world. While that's up, I'll of course remind you 2024 is the exact same dimensions. If you go to the hybrid, it is also the same. However, if you wanted to shop the little sister, the HRV, you're then looking at 24, I believe, 0.4 cubic feet of cargo space. So it is considerably less, but it comes at a cheaper price point as well. So just something to keep in mind. All right, guys. So when you fold the seats completely down, you're now looking at 76.5 cubic feet of cargo space in the back of this vehicle. So I want to throw a comparison up on the screen so you can see how does this stack up against other makes and models out there in the world. While that's up, I'll once again remind you 24 is the same, hybrid's the same. So understand the dimensions across all of the trim levels and the previous gen are going to be the exact same. Now, while we're back here, I want to point out a couple things. This car does now offer a hump in the back. So if you went back, a couple years in this vehicle, this would be a little bit flatter. A little bit of a bummer. I like the flat space. It was good for camping, good for festival goers, and just depending on what you want to store in the back of the vehicle. But nonetheless, it's not that bad, but just know that it exists. While we're here though, if you wanted to look at a Honda HRV, I want you to understand the little sister car has 55.1 cubic feet. So significantly less cargo space when we're folding the seats down and looking at that in consideration for a lower price point. Now, while we're at the back of the car, I do want to point out a couple cool things that you might want to keep in mind in case you buy this thing. The first is going to be back here, you might have saw that there is a funnel right here. And I want to explain what the purpose of this funnel is. If you come around the side over here, obviously first the gas doors are connected. The door locks, you can pop those open, but now this is capless, right? So you don't have a cap here. So if you ever ran out of gas and you didn't have a gas can, you may need a way to hold this open to pour gas down in it. That's the function of this funnel. Now, related to gas, if you ever can't get the gas door open, right? You hit the unlock and you're pressing on the button, maybe it's stuck. Know that you can come into the back of the vehicle. There's a little pull tab right here you can pull, and this will help you pop open this guy in case it ever gets stuck. Now, in all the years that I sold Hondas, I regularly ran into people, and the biggest struggle they had is trying to understand, what trim levels mean what packages are what. Now, Honda's done this a little bit more simple, right? They do trim levels. Unlike, CDJR stores or some of the other stores out there that have these packages and all these things you can add to where it really convolutes things. So I want you to understand, if I'm in the EX, which is what we're in today, right? I'm spending $33,700. If I decide I want to drop down to that base model, one trim level below this, how much money is that going to save me? But what is the list of items that I'm going to be giving up by doing so, right? So if you decided, hey, I need to save a little bit of money, I need to either be at a lower price point or a lower payment or whatever the case may be, what does that look like? And then I want to talk to you the other way. If you jump from the EX up one trim level, that then puts you in the first available hybrid model. Right? So this may make a difference to you. One, how much money is that going to cost me? But then two, what is the list of extra amenities that I'm going to get? Now, we already understand it's a hybrid, right? You're going to be jumping up to 43 in the city and 36 on the highway, so you are going to get better gas mileage. But what else are you going to get by spending that additional money? So I want you to understand, if you drop down, if you jump up, how does that affect things for you? So let's talk about second row leg space in the back of this car. I'm 6'2", and I fit in this car just fine. I've actually got quite a bit of space to work with. So when I'm sitting back here, I could have had a couple more inches. I could have been that NBA player that I always dreamed of and fit fine in the back of this car. But while we're here, I want to throw a comparison up so you can see how does the 41 inches stack up against other makes and models out there in the world. While that's up, I'll remind you, if you jump to a 2024 or a hybrid, it wouldn't make a difference. It's all the same dimensions. But if you wanted to move to that HRV, you're then looking at 37.7 inches of leg space in the back of the car. So you do lose out on a little bit if you decided to go to the little sister Honda HRV. So let's talk about the front of this vehicle, right? As far as leg space goes, you've got 41.3 inches of leg space in this car. It's actually quite a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and hop in up here. If I have the seats pushed all the way up here, I'm still good to go. I can even drop them back further, and then I've got a ton of space to work with. So understand you got quite a bit of space to work with in the front of this vehicle. Now, you might have seen how I moved this seat. It is a manual adjustment on the side. You have a power seat on this side. So if you're looking for powered seats on both sides, understand you're gonna have to climb some trim levels to get that. Just wanna make sure you're aware of that. And then of course in the front, you once again have the cloth interior versus the leather. While we're up here though, I want to throw a comparison up so you can see how does the 41.3 inches of leg space stack up against other makes and models out there in the world. As a reminder, if you jump down to the 2024, these dimensions are going to be the same. However, if you did go to the 2025 Honda HRV, It actually has more front row leg space at 41.9 inches, I believe. It's the one spot that it does a little bit better as far as comparisons goes. So let's talk about the shifter and a few of the buttons that live next to it. Now, the first one thing I want to point out is that you do have drive modes in this car. So you've got an econ mode, a snow mode, and normal. So these are all going to affect shifting points to either improve gas mileage, to create better traction, so forth and so on, depending on the drive mode that you select. Now, below that is going to be your idle stop start. If you want to turn this feature off, you would press this every time you get in and crank up the car. When you come to a stoplight, you can turn off the engine, but leave the AC and the electronics in the car on. Now, next to that, this is where you're going to have your hill descent control, right? So if you're going down a hill, it can help slow down the vehicle so that you're not burning up your brakes using it. So that feature lives right here as well, and you can turn this on and off. Now, below that, your parking brake electronic. To set it, you lift up your foot on the brake. To release, put your foot on the brake, press down. And then below that is brake hold. Brake hold is kind of a cool button. If I engage this button and I have my seatbelt on, because that's required, you're going to see something that says brake hold appear right here. What that means is that I can have my foot on the brake, I can shift the car into drive, I should say, and let my foot off the brake, and it will hold the car while it's in drive. And then when I press the gas, we'll start to move forward. So it's great for like drive-through lines, stop and go traffic, that sort of thing. It's more of a convenience feature. Additionally, while we're up here, I just want to point out that you do have a USB and a USB-C along with a 180 watt 12-volt power adapter here as well, along with the two that you have in the back that are USB-C. So let's take a minute to just discuss and show you what the steering wheel looks like. You can get in a car occasionally, and sometimes the steering wheel can have a ton of buttons, and it's a little bit overwhelming. So on here, they've made this pretty simplified as far as how it relates to the dash as well. So over here on the left side, you're gonna be able to press a home button, and then you have all these different menus you can scroll through in here. Now, I'm not gonna go through all these, but there are a lot of the menus that you would expect. Safety support, maintenance, no content if you just want that bright, your brightness, your settings, all these normal things that you would normally see. So I'll let you look through those, but just understand they exist here in a digital display. Additionally, you have your voice command. So if you wanted to use that to just call someone through Honda service or use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, you could press and hold it until Siri or Google comes on. Source will jump between AM, FM, USB, Bluetooth, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, all of those options, your volume controls, and then jump in between tracks. Now, when you move over to the other side, this is where you're gonna have some of the safety features in the vehicle, right? The first relates to your cruise control. Now, if I get up to a speed that I wanna set, I would press this button right here. This same indicator will come on and up through the dash. Once I do that, it would then hold my speed. I can then select boxes here. Now, the point of the boxes, and you'll see them appear or disappear depending on how many attempts I hit it, is it will keep designated space between me and the car in front of me. So if I'm going 65 miles an hour and the car in front of me is going 65 and they slow down to 55, it'll keep that designated space until I get out around them, and it'll take me back up to my speed. Really cool feature. Now, if you're saying, hey, I just want classic cruise control, no big deal. If you press and hold this button, you'll hear a beep, and then it'll select cruise mode selected, or you can select it again, and it'll go back to adaptive cruise control. Now, the next button over here is going to be your lane keep assist. If I press this button, you're going to see that same icon appear up here in the dash. What it's then going to use is a camera up here to detect the lines out on the road. So once it's detecting them, if I start to drift a little bit to the left or the right, it'll actually center. So you'll feel the wheel pull a little bit to the left to keep you centered in that lane. Now, understand all these features you can overpower, right? It's not going to like force you into a lane or anything like that, but it is there just in case you get distracted and you accidentally drift out of your lane. Now, related to drifting out of lanes, understand this car does offer road departure mitigation, a really cool feature. What that feature is if you start to drift off the shoulder of the road, it can actually give you an audible alert and then shake the wheel to let you know that you're about to do so. Now, if you ever want to affect those features, you can go into safety support right here. Once you get into safety support, that's the very first feature you'll see. You can turn this on and off, so understand it's right there and available to you. The next one is going to be blind spot information system. At this point, I think most of us know what a blind spot information system is. What that is there's an icon of a car right up here on the mirror. If someone is in your blind spot, that will light up. If you start to get over, it will then give you an audible alert to let you know, hey, there is a car there, don't get over. The last feature that you'll see on here is collision mitigation braking. This works with the same technology that the adaptive cruise control works with. So it's using radar down in the grille to bounce it off to detect cars in front of it. So in the same way that it would detect a car and treat that spacing, if it's looking like you might rear end another car, this can actually provide an audible alert, flash in the dash, and then actually apply the brakes to help prevent an accident so you don't rear end a vehicle. Before we walk through some of the features on this 7-inch display, I want to give you an understanding of trim levels related to audio and touchscreens. So depending on the trim level, that will affect whether you have a 7-inch screen or a 9-inch screen, and it affects the amount of wattage that pushes through the audio system and the number of speakers. So go ahead and take a look at what's on the screen and understand, depending on trim, does affect those options. So I quickly want to walk you through the infotainment system and the 7-inch touchscreen. So when you're not using Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, it's kind of interesting to me. You see a lot of grays and gradients. It's not necessarily bad looking. I like the way it flips up and it doesn't show a lot of glare. However, it's not much to look at as far as being pretty, right? It ultimately doesn't matter so long as it functions. But when you're jumping between here, you're going to notice I'm seeing a lot of grays, right? Not a whole lot to look at. This is pulling in from Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, and then I can jump over and connect, right? But your menu screens and all this is very generic looking. So when I'm looking at this outside of Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, I gotta say I'm a little bit let down, right? Now, when you jump into Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, this particular model uses a wired connection. So I'm gonna throw something up on the screen so you can understand which trim levels offer wired and which trim levels offer wireless connections. For a brief rundown of Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, of course you can see I have Google Maps pulled up, some normal locations, and then it's pulling in my Spotify. Now I can jump in here and of course pull any of the apps in here and jump into them. You can also create shortcuts, which you can see what I've done here, right? It's a quick location, so you're providing it its own.
Wendy's is 7 minutes from your location by car in light traffic.
Right, you've asked it to create a direction and take you to a certain place. So kind of nice that you can create those. They're very simple to do. And then you can also set it up for calling a contact. So if you're trying to get in touch with somebody that you do regularly, why not create a spot for them? And then of course you can rearrange all of the order of this. If you've never seen it, you can jump into any of my tips and trick videos on the CRV and I'll walk you through all of this. But understand you can access things like YouTube Music, Teams, Spotify, a lot of different things. Zoom, different apps are available. Now, however, all of them are not. So you're not going to find like Netflix or Amazon Prime or Kodi or Disney or Hulu Plus or any of those things here because it does limit them, right? It's going to prevent some of those streaming services and certain apps from being used, and some just don't offer compatibility. The other part that comes with that is when you jump into apps like Spotify, if you're driving, it's going to force you to run those searches via voice command, which isn't necessarily the end of the world, but sometimes it can be kind of a bummer because if you're trying to run that search, the voice command doesn't always pick up that well. And I wouldn't say that's just for the vehicle itself, but just in general, right? All of us have hopped in a car where you try to say something and it continually just is not understanding what you're asking it to do. The same thing can happen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You're suddenly going to notice I have things like Netflix, I've got Facebook, I've got Prime Videos, I've got YouTube TV, and I'm able to jump into these apps and actually take advantage of them. Now, the way I'm able to do that is not something direct through Honda, so I need you to understand that first. What I'm using is this box right here. This is the CPC 200T box. So this is from Carling Kit. This is what the box looks like in case you're curious. Now, I have worked with these guys over the course of a few years, and I've checked out, I think, 3 or 4 different boxes, and I've always had really good luck with these guys, and they're much more affordable than some of the other boxes I've been asked to review in the past. What this does is essentially turn your head unit into a tablet. Now, the way it's able to do that is because you're providing it with internet access. So what I'm doing is I'm making my phone a hotspot and allowing it to connect up. Not hard to do. You just go into settings, right? And then you select your phone and allow it to connect. Once you've done that, you can then jump in the apps and use any app you want, or you can go download any apps you want, right? So if there's a specific app you like to use and you'd like to have it on here, you can take advantage of it. Now, I always preface this with, guys, don't be an idiot, right? Use this responsibly. Don't be driving down the road and get yourself in a car wreck, but understand they're there, right? If I'm taking a long road trip and I have my kids in the car, maybe I want them to be able to watch something in this vehicle versus them only on the tablets or things like that. This is another option. Also, when you jump into some of those apps that do exist in Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, it unlocks them fully, meaning that if I want to run a search, I can just type in the search. So if I'm struggling with that voice command option and it can't pick up what I can say, I can just type it in. If I go into a specific artist, so we'll go with Sum 41 here, I like to keep it early 2000s, it's going to give me the full display here. So any songs that I've liked, the most popular songs, artist picks, discography, everything, you name it, all of it is here and I can click through it. The other part I like to this is I can jump into libraries, I can jump into my favorite songs, I can see all of playlists, right? It doesn't limit the usage of the apps that do exist in Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And then outside of that, it provides you access to the apps that aren't available in Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So if I want to jump into Netflix and be able to watch a show, maybe I'm waiting for someone, we're picking them up and I'm just sitting in the parking lot. Or maybe we're taking a long road trip and we'd like to be able to enjoy some stand-up comedy or whatever the case may be. How nice is it that you can come in here, you can jump in, you can select something and start watching it and enjoy it as you go down the road. What I do like too is it's not a lot of lag. You can see I'm running this right now. I don't have lag as far as getting into the apps and using them. And then when I am listening, I've talked to a few people where they say they've tried boxes that may be a little bit cheaper and the audio is off from what you're seeing on the screen. I found that this box, I don't run into that issue. So a really cool option. If this is something you're interested in, I'll of course throw my coupon code and the link in the description. I am one of their affiliates. And then of course I'll throw it up on the screen so you can see what this looks like and what the cost breakdown is. And of course, if you're using my coupon code, what that saves you and gets you down to. So before we get out of here, I want to ask you for a couple quick favors. First, I hope you'll press the like button. It always helps push this video a little bit higher up in that algorithm in that search, and hopefully others will find it since it is pretty good content. I like to think. Second, I hope you leave a comment. If you have questions, comments, concerns, or anything you wish I would add or remove, please do leave a comment. Let me know. always looking forward to hearing from you, even if it's just a little bit of positive reinforcement. Hey, we could all use a little bit. Third, I hope you subscribe to the channel so when I produce videos like this, you will receive them. And then four, if you got some friends that are shopping for SUVs, maybe specifically Hondas, or comparing something to a Honda, or even an HRV, I hope that you'll share my video with them. Other than that, like, comment, subscribe, all the things. Later, guys!